I'll talk all day.
Well,
It was nice meeting you.
I'd like to go ahead and get rolling here on, the elephant challenges have gone through various iterations, right? So we started with on market, and then we went to, you mind if I mute Christine? Thank you, I appreciate that. We went from there to multifamily, and now we're to pre-foreclosure, which pre-foreclosure you can do on market or off market. They both work, but it's one of those lists that a lot of people prefer to do off market. I prefer the off market for that list simply because you're working directly with the seller, and instead of having a middleman. And with the pre-foreclosure list, they need a solution quick, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to make a deal happen if you can connect with them. And when I say connect, in two levels: one, be able to talk to them, simply reach them, because they may or may not be so accessible. When they're in a pre-foreclosure state, their phone is just call after call after call, and they don't want to have to, they get tired of it, right? So you have to be able to somehow break that barrier between you and them, because they get tired of all the calls. Secondly, you have to be able to reach them on a personal level. You have to break down a psychological wall that's also there, because you can be seen as all the other people. Even if you can talk to them, you got to stand out as caring, as a person, as there to help, right? But if you can close that gap, if you can actually reach them, then the opportunity to make a deal is very strong. And the opportunity isn't simply like a cash deal. It could be a cash deal, but there's a lot of opportunities for a creative deal. So there, when you have an agent on market, there is a lot of resistance to creative, and agents are trying to do a quick sale. They want their commission, and the mindset is simply sell the property, right? Maybe it's an as-is investor property, but they're looking at an investor to come in, do a rehab, flip it, but they're not thinking creative most of the time. Whereas the off market, you don't have that barrier of the influence of the agent, right? So when an agent signs with them, guess who they view as their consultant, as the person they trust, right? The agent. It doesn't matter how much that agent knows or doesn't know, the agent becomes their consultant. So in order for you to be able to reach them and help them, if they're in pre-foreclosure, you've got to go through that agent. You got to win the agent over, and then you got to win them over. So is it possible online? Absolutely. You can get some good deals online, but offline, you don't have that middleman, which allows you to talk to them and allows you to be that professional, you to be that consultant, and help them through the process. So I like this elephant challenge more than the others because of the potential of doing deeper deals and helping people that are in seriously challenging situation. It's not the end of the world. You can go through foreclosure and your life moves on, right? It's not the end of the world, but it is stressful, and it can put their family in a seriously challenging situation for a long time. So if you can help them get past that and move to the next phase of their life, it's like taking a weight off of their shoulders, and they can breathe again. So, there's an exchange. There's always an exchange. So you need to get paid for your work by the income from the property, however you're going to work it, right? You have a business, but you're also helping them. So if you don't see that you're helping them, then you need to get your mind in the right frame, because you are. And you need to walk into it with that mindset. and with the mindset that it doesn't matter if you get that deal or not, but you're still helping them. So some of the people that you talk to when you do pre-foreclosure, they're not going to sign with you. And maybe they can even get their life straightened out and not have to sell their house. And if you can help them with a solution, maybe it's a loan mod, maybe it's asking their uncle for a little bit of cash, whatever they can do to keep the house because they want to stay in the house, you've done a good deed. You're not going to get a paycheck for that, but you can go home feeling good about that. But there will still be others that can't stay in the house. A lot of others, most of the others will not be able to keep the house. So here's what happens. There's a few of them that will keep the house, but the majority won't. And of those that don't keep the house, some of them will go on to work with somebody like us, and some of them will end up just losing the house because they are paralyzed with not knowing what to do, or they've gone into this mode where it's like an internal meltdown and they simply lose their house. You can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. But you're looking for, number one, to reach out to anybody you talk to help them, sincerely help them. And number two, of those that are willing to be helped that cannot stay in their house, to work out a win-win situation for the takeover of that house. So how that win-win works, you know, in the Elephant Challenge, they talked about the script and helping them and just understanding them. And one thing that was mentioned is the bunny story. I don't know if anybody heard or remembers the bunny story that Pace mentioned. Basically, one of his first houses that he was working on, he went there. I think it was his very first, and the lady had a lot of offers. Pace's mentor, she told him, I think it was like 150. That if you lock it up at 150, you're good to go. So so Pace asked her, he saw, you know, a bunch of mail there from other investors, and he's like, so how's it been going? What sort of offers have you been getting? And she's like, well, you know, a lot of them have been in the 150, 165 range, but I'd really like to get more than that. You know, I'd like to, if I can get 10, 15K more than that, that's really where I want to be. And he was just real with her. And he told her, you know, I don't think I'm your buyer. I really can't do that. And she was taken back because all the others that came in, they were trying to get her down. They were trying to negotiate that price down. And she didn't really feel like they were on her side. They were just negotiating the lowest price they could. But Pace simply said, I don't think I can take this deal from you. You know, it's not going to work for me, but maybe there's something else I can do to help. And they were just chatting and talking, and she took him in the backyard, and she had these bunnies that she was taking care of, rabbits. There's like 3 of them. And she's, you know, I've got to move, but I don't want somebody to kill my pets and eat them or whatever. I want to be taken care of. So he called his mom on the spot. She came over, picked up the bunnies, and she told him, I'm not going to eat these. They'll be, you know, I'll take care of them until I find a good home of somebody that loves them. And that was what helped her, right? It broke the ice. It helped her to see who he was. He didn't even go after the deal. He just told her, look, you know, if you end up needing to sell lower, you got my number. You know, I hope you can work this situation out, and I look forward to talking to you if it does. So she called him back later and said, yeah, I got a lot of other offers. In the end, you know, my time's up. I decided to go with you because you helped me. You took care of my bunnies, right? So Pace's phrase is look for the bunnies. Look for how you can genuinely help them. And maybe it's their pets, but more than likely it's something else. Yeah, it's probably not going to be bunnies, but maybe the way that you can help them is finding some place that they can move into. So if they're going to lose their house, you don't want them to be homeless. You know, work the connections and try to find somebody who will, you know, some way that they can get a rental. Maybe what they need out of this deal is $10,000. Is there some way that you can work out 5K, 10K, you know, something to help them so that they can move on to the next chapter of their life? You know, just be a person and talk to them, see what they need, what are they wanting out of the deal, what can you do for them, and be realistic about what you can't do for them. And then you can work out, you know, try to work out some form of a deal that will work. It won't always work as a cash deal, you know, where we just bail them out with cash and we do a fix and flip and we're on to the next deal. It might be some form of a creative deal. And there's tons of ways to do creative deals. Every deal is different. So maybe that creative is a simple novation agreement. Maybe it's a subject to where we catch up the arrears, we take over the mortgage and we do it as a rental, as a lease option, as a seller finance, which is called a wrap. You know, there's multiple ways that you can work it, right? But you need to understand the numbers of where they're at and what they need out of the situation. And you need to understand of the possible solutions and try to match. So you're kind of playing a doctor to help them out, to help out their situation and find the medicine that will cure their disease, right? That's the basics of how working off market and in particular pre-foreclosures work. You can work different lists. You can work pre-foreclosure, which is somebody that has a timeline and a serious financial crunch. They need a solution and they need it fast. You can work water shut off and you can work divorce, you can work probate. There's, you know, a lot of different lists that you can work, and everyone has their own niche. You know, if you can get into a niche, and maybe that is pre foreclosure or foreclosure, then you become good at that, and you become good at how to talk to them, because the way you talk to a tired landlord is not the same as how you talk to someone in foreclosure. So you want to become good at that and try not to diversify into 10 different types of lists or 10 different methods. You know, if you want to do pre-foreclosure, stick with it, become good at it. If you want to do probate or you want to do, you know, the on-market agent outreach, stick with it, become good at it. But, you know, what I want to cover today in particular are any questions that people might have in how to do pre-foreclosure. It could be with how to get the list, how to skip trace, how to do the call, how to get past all the competition, whatever it is, you name it, I'm happy to help work past your questions. Misty Long, are you talking about helping with a 10,000 to help them move, or what helps them become whole? If you go to your recorder of your county and look up notice of default, lease pendants, or notice of sale, you will find so many people that need help. Absolutely. Yeah. So notice of default, lease pendants, pre-foreclosure, all the same thing. So if you're talking about pre-foreclosure, and some people call it foreclosure, right? So those terms can, when people say foreclosure, they might be talking about pre-foreclosure. If you use privy, he said in some states they'll call it pre-foreclosure, some they'll call it foreclosure, but it's lease pendants. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right. You can get that from the county, it's the clerk of county, it's called. So, I don't know, clerk of court, the county clerk of court. Some counties are easy to get it, some counties are not. So, you can see how it works with your county, wherever you're working. And but here's a catch. If everyone's working the same list, then it becomes harder. So if the barrier to entry to get that list is higher, that's a good thing. Because now you've got a list that is not so hardly, it's not worked as hard as other lists. So if your county is a little bit more challenging, count it as a blessing. Just keep knocking until you get the list. Within reason, of course. You don't want to waste too much time. But if you can get a list that's hard to get a hold of, is a beautiful thing. Now, Misty also mentioned helping them. The question: are you talking about helping them with 10,000 to move, or what helps them to become whole? So, yeah. As far as whole, you don't give them the money to keep the house. So if that's what you mean by making them whole, you're just kissing that money goodbye if you do that. So that's not what we're doing here. We're helping them move on to the next chapter so that you can take the house and turn it into something, an asset, as opposed to, for them at this point, it's a liability, right? So you need to change that from a liability to an asset. So the 10,000 is simply to help them to move and to move to the next chapter of their life. And how you work out that money, I said 10, it might be 5. You talk to them. What would help you to move on to the next chapter? And they might simply say 2,000, right? But you need to see, and depending on the solution, how much money you have to put into the deal will make a difference in what solutions are available to you. So, if you're going to look at a lease option, you have to have very little money up front to make a lease option work. So if you have to do 30,000 in arrears or 50,000 in arrears plus 10,000 to them, and then you want to wholesale that to somebody so that they can do the lease option, now they have $50,000 to $70,000 that they have to come up with. And I can tell you, a lease option is not an option. It's not a solution for the situation. And the same thing with a what do you call it, a wrap, a seller finance. Depending on the value of the house, you typically want to keep the down payment that the new buyer for the wrap is going to get into. You want to keep that down, typically below 10% if possible. Maybe 12%, but you don't want to go very much higher because then it's too much of a barrier for buyers. So if you can keep that below 10%, that's perfect. So if they have 30K in arrears, to be able to catch up the mortgage, now you're already, if it's a $300,000 house, you're already there at 10%, right? So maybe you can go to 12, what is that, 36K? So now you might be able to hand them a little bit of a check to help them out, but not a lot, or that takes that possibility out as an option as well. It's not the only possibility, but you got to know what all your options are, what the situation is, and what option will work. So you're a solution finder, and what you can do for them will depend on how much in arrears they are, how much the house is worth, how much the house needs fixing, and what sort of solutions are on the table. Maybe it's a nice house that's right by a college or a hospital, and you can turn it into a traveling nurse's place, a midterm rental, right? Or short-term rental. If you can do that, now that's a whole different scenario. So you got to understand all of this possible solutions. You become the doctor and you figure out how to fix their problem with a potential solution. But the 10,000 is not to make them whole in the house so they could stay there. It's to help them to move on. And it's just a number that I picked out of the air. Megan, if you catch a multifamily owner prior to going into pre-foreclosure? Is there a way to find out how much they still owe on the complex? Absolutely. The easiest way is just to ask them, right? Ask them how much is owed, how much in arrears, get all the information straight from them. You can do it with public records. You can see, well, basically what you can, you can't see everything, but you can see when the mortgage was taken out, what it was for, what were the terms, and you can calculate out, pretty much where they should be on that based on those factors. But the best thing to do is just simply ask them and go with that. And in the end, if you're going to end up doing the deal with them, you will have to do your due diligence. You'll have to get the paperwork. So in the case of pre-foreclosure, you're going to need a statement to show what will it take to make that mortgage whole again. So it's not simply going to be a number in arrears. It's also, there's going to be fees involved. So you need to know exactly how much will it take to make this mortgage good. And that's, when you talk to them, and then as well, what's the balance? So you have to get those actual papers. You don't have to do it initially. When you're negotiating with them, you don't need all of those papers up front, but before you can even go into a contract. But if they didn't, sometimes they won't want to tell you or give you all the papers until you're actually under contract. Depending on the multifamily, most small multifamilies, 100 doors or less, they're going to be mom and pop run, and the paperwork is not going to be in good shape. You won't get most of it, but try to get what you can, and go off of what you can. But then at some point in time, before or after you lock it up, you need to go ahead and make sure you get all your papers. If their paperwork was not in place, not accurate, let me rephrase that. If what they told you was not accurate as you're doing your due diligence, then you adjust accordingly. Multifamily is, some people do more of that negotiating before the contract, some do it after. Two different ways with multifamily that, it can work either way. But you will have to get that information validated at some point in time. Initially, you can go off of what they tell you. Isaac, what city in North Carolina? Okay, so in North Carolina, I'm doing land deals in different areas across the state. So I'm doing some in the mountains. I'm doing some more towards the coast. Those are the two areas. And I'm also doing some by Southern Pines, but depending on the type of land. But as far as houses, I'm not doing, at this moment in time, I'm not doing houses in North Carolina. I got a wrap I'm doing in Kentucky, and I've got, basically we're looking at deals in other areas of the country. I'm actually trying to find a flipper in Raleigh at this point in time, but I'm not heavy in doing SFRs in North Carolina right now. So I'm in different areas. However, Raleigh in particular, that's, if I was to get more heavy into North Carolina, it would be in Raleigh. I dabble in Raleigh, I'll put it that way. So right now I do have a buyer that he's a buddy of mine. He does fix and flips, and his is wrapping up in at the end of the month. So he's gonna, he wants to put his money into a new one, right? So I'm helping him find a good flip there, but I'm really not doing a lot of SFRs in North Carolina right now. Misty, if you do call someone that just got a notice of foreclosure, how do you start that conversation? Yeah, that's a good question, Misty. So there's two different trains of thought. Some people prefer to go in and not even reveal that they're in pre-foreclosure. And you just say, hey, I'm interested in your house. I'm just wondering if you ever thought about selling it. I like a method that was also shown in the Elephant Challenge, which is to be much more direct. I understand that there's a problem with the bank and I'm here to help. And you can tell them, I saw that you're on pre-foreclosure. I'm here to help. There's solutions out there. I know I can help you. And that's the more direct approach, right? So you can do it whichever you feel more comfortable with. I like the direct approach myself. I like to just be open with them and not have to worry about avoiding the saying something that reveals I know what's going on with them. I just feel like when I'm doing that, I'm not necessarily lying. I'm just avoiding telling them what I know, right? But I just don't feel comfortable with that. My preference is to be open and upright. They don't have a lot of time. If they're in pre-foreclosure, they're on a timeline. And, if you're just playing around, or I don't know necessarily playing around, but if you're just telling them, hey, I just wondering if you thought about selling your house. Now you haven't directly approached the issue. So you have to try to dig out of them their pain. And if they say, no, I'm not really interested in selling my house right now. Well, you know better. You already know they're in pre-foreclosure. So now you have to figure out how to angle your conversation to get out of them what they don't want to tell you. And that can be challenging. My preference is just to tell them up front, I understand that you're in a sticky situation with the bank. I'm here to help you. And then, go from there. They might ask you, you're looking to buy the house, or how can you help? Or at that point, you can just tell them up front, I may or may not end up buying your house. I do buy houses, but I'd like to know, first off, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in the house? Do you want to sell the house? What would be the best solution for you? And just genuinely try to help them with what they're seeking and why they're seeking that. And if they say they want to stay in the house, which most people do, then you can walk through what their possibilities are, right? Well, have you thought about doing a loan modification? Yeah, but I can't because of XYZ. I already tried that. Well, what about getting a loan? Well, what about, this is not the best solution for your records, but if you really want to keep the house and you're in a really bad bind financially, what about a bankruptcy? And then that allows you to hold on to your house. So you can walk them through the different options. And if they can see by you walking them through that it's a no, 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 then you can just tell them, it sounds like selling the house might actually be the best fit for you. If you were, and then, let them answer that, see what they have to say. And if they can come up with that realization themselves, then it's a lot easier, because you can go to the next step of, all right, well, being as you need to sell your house, here are the options. This is what we can do, or you said that you want to do this. Let's see how we can accomplish that. Does that answer your question, Misty? Okay, super. Isaac, how do we get boots on the ground in Raleigh if we are from California using off-market method? I use the PIN by connecting. Gotcha. As my deal finding software. Yeah, I've seen that before, the PIN software. I'm curious, Isaac, how good that is. I've heard different things, positive and negative on that. Privy, I'll be honest with you, that I've looked at the pre-foreclosure data in Privy, and at least in Raleigh, there's nothing there. It's not anything valuable. So he said he gets the info, the data from First American, but I don't know. It seems like maybe there's holes in where there's good data and bad data, but it didn't seem like Raleigh had that good data. As far as like boots on the ground, so there's several things you can do. Number one, um, boots on the ground is one of the better methods of actually, well, let me rephrase that. Boots on the ground can mean different things. So if you want boots on the ground to, like, first you call them and you text them and somehow you get a hold of them, and then you want boots on the ground to go negotiate and sign the papers after you've done that initial call and negotiating, I could be the boots on the ground. I can help close that deal. There's others as well. You can put out in the Facebook chat saying, hey, looking for boots on the ground in Raleigh. Maybe you want boots on the ground for another purpose. And that could be simply taking photos, right? When you're ready to relist or whatever you're doing with it. Or to show the house in the case of, you're working with a wrap or something like that. You're going to seller finance. So depending on what you need out of the boots on the ground, there's different solutions for that. But if you want another type of boots on the ground is the initial contact. So instead of actually using a phone call or a text message to get a hold of them or direct mail, you're going out and you're door knocking. You're leaving a post-it note at their place so that they can contact you, right? So that's a different method. Somehow you just have to reach them. And I can tell you, door knocking, your list is a method that is a little bit more challenging as far as like your schedule. You have to get out of your office seat. You got to go out in the cold. You got to go out in the heat. And so there's not as much competition to that. And you're face to face. So a lot of times you can reach people that way that you may not be able to reach over the phone. There's a lot more competition over the phone, not just not just investors, but they're getting calls because they're behind on their credit card, they're behind on their car payment. If they're behind on their house, which everyone needs a place to live, that's like you would get rid of your credit cards before you get rid of your house, right? So they're getting more calls, and they're probably not picking up if they don't have their number in their, it might say spam, 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 or it says 1-800, or, this is an out-of-state number. I don't know who this is. So they're not picking up. So you trying to call them, can you get through? Absolutely. Can you work phone lists? If you get that number and the list of pre-foreclosures and you skip trace and you call them, can you get a deal out of it? Absolutely. If you're doing SMS, text messaging, can you get a deal out of it? Absolutely. But it's more of a numbers game. You have to do more of them, right? You got to somehow, all of those, they're going to not pick up, not pick up, not pick up. And you got to try to get through and get them to pick up. So a lot of people use VAs for that because of the fact that there's so much, it's a numbers game, that they don't want to waste their labor calling, what's your labor worth? So if your labor is worth $50 an hour, it doesn't pencil out to be able to do that. So that's why people use VAs for calling a lot of times, because it's cheap labor to do that phone calling until they can actually reach somebody. And then they are trained on how to do that spill. Can you do it? Absolutely. But when you're starting out, maybe it's a learning phase and you don't expect to make as much money, but it's tough because you're doing a cold call type of a scenario, and a lot of people have challenges doing that. So you have to be ready to face that. Can you? 100%. And the people, VAs doing phone calls will not have the same numbers as you doing phone calls, because you are here in the States, you can relate to them, you can send somebody out to their house, or you can go to their house. So, I got off track a little bit, but with the boots on the ground, maybe you can help me out, Isaac, understanding exactly what you're looking for as far as boots on the ground. And Isaac, I'd like to know what you have to say about the connected investors. I've never used that data, but I've been curious on how good that is, the PIN data. Isaac, you here? Trying to see where your name is at. I don't see the name. Maybe I'm over it.
Ralph, can I answer about the boots on the ground?
For certain.
Boots on the ground, I mean, are you in any of the groups that PACE have right now going on Elephant Challenge? Isaac?
Oh, I see. So PIN, Isaac's saying PIN gives you free skip tracing, which is an
Yeah, I
advantage.
mean, it's not, PIN, I use the same software as well, Ralph. If you join any of the communities that Elephant Challenge that have, like I'm in New York, I'm doing deals in Texas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, you know, and for those, when we say boots on the ground, you got to collaborate and you got to partner with people who's in the States. The best way to do, like if you come to Elephant Challenge, like for example, I'm in Elephant Challenge with All Star Group, that we do Zoom calls every day, calling agents, calling foreclosures, but at the same time, like we have people that we collaborate. We need to go look at a property that you can ask, you know, you partner up with them. Like Pace always talks about, you know, you're looking for an EMD or anything. So it's a vast majority of community here that you have, and you can use it to your advantage. Doesn't matter where you are now. You could be in California, you could be doing deals in, you know, New York, Texas, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether he's still here though.
Yeah. All right, cool. So thank you, Lee. I appreciate that. So let me see where we left off here in the list. Misty, if you do call someone that just got a notice. Oh, forget that one. Okay. Okay, Megan, once you cover pre-foreclosure, will you be helping analyze deals? I don't think I'll have time tonight, Megan. We've only got 15 minutes left. So we'll see if there is. Megan, did you have a deal in particular you wanted to go over? You can just speak up if you want to.
Oh, yep. Hey, Ralph, this is Megan.
Hey, Megan.
Sorry, I was trying to figure out how to get this all up and going. I did, and that's totally fine. For some reason, when I was looking at the calendar, it had like a 2-hour time block for this evening's call. And so, and I knew the primary topic was pre-foreclosure, which has been great. I've been listening. I just, wasn't sure if I had come across I guess, multifamily portfolio that I was just kind of trying to get a second set of eyes on is all. So,
Okay. Well, yeah, I can do that at the tail end. Let me just make sure to answer people's questions about the
absolutely. That
pre-foreclosure.
sounds great. Yeah,
and then we
loving
can
the
go
info.
ahead.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate it.
You betcha. Yeah, no problem. So James knocks doors. Very cool. Where do you knock doors, James? James, you here?
Yep,
Okay.
I'm here. So I'm
Where do you-
knocking doors in Lynchburg.
Okay, Lynchburg, VA.
Yep, Lynchburg, Virginia.
Yeah. So that Lynchburg, that's up in the mountains, right?
We're just to the east of the mountains.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Bedford, when you get out, it's probably about maybe an hour to the Blue Ridge Parkway out into the mountains there. I'm about an hour from there.
Okay, cool. How's your door knocking going over there?
So I get probably about 30-40% of the people that I knock on that I actually talk to. And my conversations have went well. I haven't secured any deals yet for myself, but I have managed to solve 4 people's foreclosure.
Oh, good for you. Yeah,
It was and I'm just doing it, just learning as I go, you know. I knocked at some
Yeah.
lady's door. She told me she was in foreclosure. She had a reverse mortgage. I told her I would, you know, figure it out, talk to a team, brought it back to the group here at Creative Finance online, you know, and talked to some sub-2 students and did a lot of Google searching and figured it out. She was able to stay in her house. So
yeah.
it's good.
That's very nice. That's good. you
I've
know.
also done some, you know, you were saying about networking, boots on the ground. There was another sub-2 student that I saw on one of the Facebook groups or something like that. And he needed somebody in Chatham, Virginia to take pictures of a house that he bought. He was in Tampa, Florida. And so it's 40 minutes from me. So he paid me $300 and gave me all kinds of access to training things that he had and things like that, and said, yeah, go take pictures for me and put it on a Google Drive. So that's what I did. So
Yeah,
yeah, there's lots of opportunities for boots on the ground.
yeah. Don't quit. You know, you're just starting out, but the more conversations you have, you know, you'll get good at it. And if you come across a deal that doesn't seem like there's a simple solution, give myself or another sub-2 a call that has, you know, that knows creative finance, and we can figure out, you know, maybe there's a solution there that's just not in plain sight.
That's right. Yeah, I worked with Angie Acosta
Okay.
on, she helped me through a loan modification, and she actually solved 2 people's issues that I had through loan modifications that I, you know, got her in on.
Nice. Very good. So everyone heard that, Angie Acosta. Good job, James. Door knocking is something that it's a tried and true way of getting deals. So, you know, don't be afraid of that. If you're really hungry for a deal, go door knock for certain. Alex, yeah. Alex, you got the same thing as I, just not there on Privy. I think you're talking about Privy there, right, Alex? The data is just not there.
I can say something about the data that I found is that was the first thing that I did with my foreclosure data is I wanted to find a good source for data. And I found that I have a subscription to Batch Leads, and it was, you know, I was knocking doors of people that were out of pre-foreclosure like 2-3 years ago. So I was like,
Yeah.
that's not working. So I found out that in Virginia, they don't report to the courts. So it's just a private thing. So it's really hard to find that data. And I don't know that Privy or anyone else could have access to the data because it's just not there. They don't have to file anything with the courts.
So how
we don't
are
know
you
about
getting
it.
it?
So we don't know about it until it goes into foreclosure with a trustee.
Oh, okay.
And they're getting ready to set up an auction. So I usually find out about, I would say 60 to 120 days or 60 to 90 days before it goes to auction.
Yeah.
And I get it from the trustee websites. There's probably about 8 or 10 of them here in Virginia that handle the bulk of the foreclosures. And
Yeah.
so it's just a matter of data mining their sites. And I'm trying to automate that process now.
Good.
Stacking up into a CSV file, load it up into Batch Leads, and then skip trace.
Yeah.
And then
There you go. Yeah. That's
and
good.
so
you know,
now I'm
because
pretty confident that, you know, once I get it through my process, 100%. If it's on my list, it's definitely in foreclosure. And I've had people, you know, homeowners challenge me. I said, no, I said, you check it out. And then they get on there and they're like, yeah, it's definitely in foreclosure.
yeah. But what you got going on is great because everyone's working Batch Leads, PropStream, right? But they're not working what you got.
Right.
Because it's a specialty list. So
That's right.
yeah. All right, let's see who we got here. Just going through here and making sure that capture all the things. Okay, looks like we covered everyone's questions. So I'm going to jump over to who was this? Megan, was it you that wanted to go over a deal? Is that correct?
It is me. Yes.
All
Sorry.
right, me. Let's cover your deal.
Okay, so I'm in Dallas, Texas, probably irrelevant, maybe not. And I came across two different apartment complexes, same owner that is looking to sell. And I just kind of, I don't have like a specific, I guess, Excel template or anything like that. Just kind of going over the rent roll and the T12 and his, profit and loss statement that he sent me, and, just kind of trying to figure out, based on his asking and the information that I have, just kind of like where his asking lands, and, just kind of trying to see if I'm on par with what kind of offer I would go in and make.
Okay, so real quick before we move into that, I missed one question here, and I want to make sure, in case people end up leaving shortly. Leonardo asked, other than batch leads and the county center, how else to find pre-foreclosures? So PropStream is another good one. Pre-foreclosures daily, and Pace actually mentioned that they are more expensive, but you can get data there quicker than you can in other places, and they do probate, they do different types of data, divorce and all kinds of stuff, but it is more expensive, and they do so there's more than one way to get that data, and as we saw in Virginia, there is another way of doing it, but the two main ones that most people go to are PropStream and Batch Leads. The other one I would recommend is going down to the clerk of court, and that's a good way to grab the data too. So sorry there. So Megan, what are these numbers? Go ahead and run us through them.
Yeah, sure. Is there any particular order you wanted me to start in?
No, let's just see what you got, and then we'll plug the holes.
Okay, so just looking at the P&L statement that was sent to me. I can't read it honestly. I'm losing my eyesight here. So for one of the properties, it has 120, how many units is it?
124.
124 units. NOI looks to be, if I can read that, 754,253 net income. And let's see. Apologies, I'm trying to get this Excel sheet to where it's legible. And then looking at this, I'm not sure if this looks correct. Okay, that was the total annual. And then it looks like their net income. So, I mean, if I just look at all of their net income summary, looks like it was at 1.546. Do you want exacts here or just rounding this?
Rounding is fine. So net income is what?
1.55. And then it looks like their expenses is at 697,000.
697.
Their net operating, their NOI, I'm going to amend that number. Originally was at 849. And looks like there's a few non-operating expenses here for 213,000.
Like cap, or what sort of expenses?
It's a good question. On here it just says there's just a line item for non-operating expenses, but so I'm not actually sure until I go through some of the other sheets specifically what that would be.
And how much was that?
213,000.
Okay.
So essentially though, their net income that they have listed for this particular unit is at 630,000.
Okay, so I've heard a few numbers and I'm a little bit lost. At first,
Yeah.
you mentioned NOI of 753.
Yeah, I'm just kind of this is the first time I'm going through it as well,
Looking for it.
actually, this particular unit.
Okay,
So I definitely see like some of the conflicting info here, just not quite adding up.
okay,
Or it could be they just have some of the items, some of the things itemized that I just haven't quite pieced together.
right. All
Uh,
right, give me 1 minute here. I'm gonna pull up a spreadsheet.
There, what is this here? Okay, yeah, 124 units. Okay, cool. Hmm. Let's see. Yeah, I'd have to.
Okay. For some reason, it's not letting me log in right now. I have an older, let me see if I can get in through my other folder. 1 minute here.
Hmm. Interesting.
He's the first that I went for.
One second here. It's making me run through this whole thing.
No,
again.
no worries, Robin. I'm just sitting here kind of reviewing the numbers that I have here as well. I think the correct NOI number to use is that 754,000.
Yeah, while you're checking that stuff out, it logged me out of my Google account, and now it's making me go through a whole process because I
I
don't
did do
remember
that
my
earlier
password.
and it was like, open the Google app on your phone. I'm like, but I am on my phone.
Right? Right.
Let's see.
All right, I am back in.
They also gave me a copy of the rent roll, which is helpful. Um, let's see. Calculator. Yes. Average rent. Let's see.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. We'll start punching in whatever numbers you have.
Okay,
And even if they're not accurate, we can still walk through the exercise.
sure. Yeah, no, that would be super helpful. Thank you.
You betcha. Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Christine. See you next week.
Right, this is the one I have. Is this the right one? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a copy of this. So this is the template, and I'm gonna put the link in the chat. You're welcome to use this deal analyzer. And I get, when I pass this out, people that say, please give me edit rights. You cannot have edit rights. I myself messed it up. So will you mess it up? 100%. So instead of editing this, what you do is you go into here and you click on file, make a copy.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah. Once you have your own copy, you can name it whatever makes sense. I like to name it after the property. So, maybe it's a 123 Main in Raleigh, whatever it is. So you give it that name, and then this becomes something that you save for your homework that you put into it. So instead of using the same one over and over, make a fresh one every single time. And as I update this template, as you pull a fresh one, you'll get all the updates as well. That way you always got the fresh template, and you kept a record of any work you put into this property. So starting out, we put in the address, we put in the seller price. If they have one, sometimes they'll just ask, what are you willing to give? But a lot of times,
So, okay, I can give you that seller price if
Yeah.
that's helpful.
sure.
It was 11,755.
11 as in 1.75 million.
11,750,000.
Got it. Okay, so do you know the age of the complex?
Yes, I believe it was 1968 is what this one was built in. I'm double checking that. 1968.
Okay, and how many units total did you say?
124 units total.
Okay, how many units per building?
Ooh, good question. So there's 13 buildings.
So something like 10-ish.
Yeah. Might sound about right. I was trying to see
So,
if maybe it was.
You can put 5 to 10 or 11 to 50. It sounds more like 5 to 10. If there's 13 buildings total, it sounds like 9 times 13 gets you right up in there in the 124 range.
Sounds about right. Just under 10. Yeah.
Is it master metered or the tenants billed directly?
Yes, it is master meter.
Now heading over to the condition of the property, the class and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So there might be differences between the apartments, but in general, are they 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms?
So it looks like 1 and 2 bedrooms. I was kind of trying to do some math here on which ones are 1 and 2, just kind of scrolling. Looks like it might be.
Yeah. It's not too important right now, but just try to fill in this information with the data that you have.
Yep.
And the pro forma is like, if you're going to do a modification, let's say that they're oversized apartments and you want to turn it from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom, you can do that.
Okay,
But you don't have to worry too much about this. This is more like collecting data for yourself.
perfect.
Beds and baths. Neighborhood class is very important.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that you are you never try to go above the neighborhood class unless they're improving the neighborhood. If there's a neighborhood improvement project happening, then you can do that. Other than that, you want to stick with the class. So it might be that it's currently the neighborhood class is let's call it a B neighborhood. But the condition of the building that you're looking at, the apartments, is a C class. So now your goal is to take the C class up to the neighborhood class of a B.
Yeah, I would probably say the neighborhood class is still a C currently.
Okay.
Maybe eventually it'll get to B, based on location, but C for right now and condition is C. And
Okay,
there's
so,
no C plus if I could do that, but so
So
C for both of them.
so yeah, so the condition is kind of matching the neighborhood. It's not in super rough shape. It might need a little bit of touch up, right?
Yeah, it could use some touch up for sure.
Okay, we'll get there in a minute. What do you see? Because that will affect the pricing, right? The condition. So if it's if the neighborhood is a C and it's in a rough shape or it needs some decent amount of help, I would call this a D condition, but we'll leave it as is for now. We might come back to that. Tenant class. Depending on how well it's managed, if you're in a C neighborhood, I would expect to have C tenant class. If it's
Yeah.
poorly managed, you might have a D tenant class.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about the management, to be completely honest.
We'll call it a C. That's something that, you can
Might
think
stay
about,
consistent, yeah,
and as you gather data, you can take a peek at that. The
Okay.
asset class is kind of a mix of all of these, and that's you're gathering this data or making a judgment call and saying, you know what, it's in a C class neighborhood, its condition kind of matches that, and the tenant class matches that, so I'm going to call this a C asset class. Or maybe it's not quite where it needs to be on condition, so I'm going to call it a CD. But that's the judgment call that you're making. And then your pro forma is, where do you want to take it to? You want to take it to a C because you're in a C class neighborhood. Make sense?
yes.
You're going to raise it from a CD to a C.
Mhm.
So your cap rate, the formula will automatically put in a number based off of the asset class that you give it here. So if I change this to a C, my cap changes.
Okay.
So the cap rate is basically a way of measuring what it's trading at.
Sure,
There's a formula behind it, but the way you want to think about it is the cap rate says for this class of property, it's trading at a 9 cap, it's trading at an 8 cap, it's trading at a 6 cap. The formula will pull up a number here, but this is just a national average number. So
got it. Okay.
depending on where you live,
Mhm.
the Northwest cap is not going to be the same as the Midwest or the
makes
South, or so you got to know, and you can ask realtors, you can ask others in that market to find out what these assets are trading at in that area. Okay. So you can adjust that. So you can overwrite this formula that put in a 9. If it's 8.25, overwrite it with 8.25.
I mean, if I had to take a guess, just knowing the Dallas Fort Worth market, and where this particular complex is, probably about 7.5 cap
Okay.
is what I would estimate.
All right. And then because and this says 8, but it's really 7.5 because of the number of digits it's showing.
Yeah.
So what I would also do, this is if it's in CD shape, there's a risk reward ratio. So if it's in a lower neighborhood class or lower class of property, it'll be a higher cap.
Sure.
So an A class will be a lower cap. So being is that you're of a CD condition, a CD asset class right now, should be a higher cap than once you get it to a C class. So if you're at 7.5 now, once you get it to a C class, it should be trading at, we'll say 7.25, maybe it's 7.0, I don't know. But once you condition it, you stabilize it, then you should see your cap rate go down because you created a better asset class. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yes.
Okay. The GRM is another way of evaluating it, similar to the cap. So you'll see on LoopNet and other places where they're advertising and with realtors that have their multifamily listings, cap is the number one way that they'll evaluate it, but the second way is GRM. GRM, what does that stand for? Gross rental, I don't remember what it stands for. Multiplier, gross something multiplier. But basically it's similar to the cap where it's a multiplier based off of, I think, the gross rent, if I remember right. So the way that you evaluate the GRM is you take your gross rent and you multiply it by this multiplier. And that gives you a different way of evaluating it. So let me
Okay.
look at my formula down here. So value GRM, yeah. So it's just taking your gross rent times that. So GRM, yeah, I'm sure that's what it is now. Gross rental multiplier.
Yeah.
And that gives you your other evaluation type. So the cap rate evaluator takes your NOI and it divides it by the cap. And that's how you get your evaluation with the cap rate. NOI divided by cap. So those two numbers, you can look at it one way, you can look at it the other way, and they're just kind of a way of putting an evaluation on the property. Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So coming down to the income level, now we can start plugging in the numbers that you're pulling up. The gross rent. So you have gross rent, and you take your, from there you have your loss to lease, which what that means is there might be some of the doors that are not occupied because perhaps they're occupied by a management,
Mhm.
or they're in some other form of a use, but you're not getting a lease out of it. So there's a
Sure.
loss to lease number, a vacancy loss, which the vacancy loss is like how many months, or if you have what percentage of the houses of the doors are vacant throughout the year. If you have 124 doors, you're going to have some vacancies throughout the year.
Yeah.
So
Right now, this particular unit is actually at 100% occupancy.
yeah, but that's not the number you want to use.
Yeah.
Right now doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything.
Sure.
Right now goes away tomorrow. Right.
Sure.
Right now is not the same as it was 6 months ago. So the vacancy loss, you want to plug in a number that makes sense overall. So if you can get their T12, their T24, their T36, then you can get an accurate, or at least a more accurate vacancy loss. So do you know what those are? The T12, T24?
Yeah, I don't know that they sent us the T12.
Yeah, you might not get them. But basically that can help you to see what the vacancy loss is. They'll tell you it's all full now, and it may be all full now, but that doesn't mean it was all full all year round. You know, nobody has all full all year round because people move. If you have 124 units, people will move out, and then they have to do a turn and get somebody else in it, right? If
Mhm.
they're really, really good, they might be 98, something like that, occupancy, or 2% vacancy loss. But what you want to try to shoot for is about 5%. And here's why. If you have 100% occupancy 100% of the time, that's kind of an indication that the actual rents are under market. Nobody wants to leave, because if they leave, they're going to have to pay more.
Yeah,
Right? It's also an indication that, you know, the place is not a disaster.
sure.
So that they're content living there. But if the vacancy loss is 20%, now you know something else is wrong.
Sure.
Maybe it's a bad neighborhood, maybe it's mismanaged, maybe the rents are too high. But shooting for a 5% vacancy is a nice balance where you've got a really high occupancy rate, and your rents are high enough that you kind of maximize your potential there. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
It does. I just know kind of like the overall occupancy average throughout DFW, I think is about 91 to 92%.
Sure. But
So maybe
if
like
you
an
took this
8%
over,
vacancy loss or so.
all right, we'll call it 8 right now. But the idea is that you're going to try to be better than the rest. You're going to try to move it to 5%.
Yep.
Okay. Collection loss. I'm not going to go into detail on these right now, but you know, people that aren't paying concessions to try to get new people in the door, they
Mhm.
might do a, you know, half month's rent off or something like that.
Sure.
Non-revenue. So all of these add up to your effective rental income. So you start with your gross, you take away all this stuff here, and you come up with an effective rental income. Then you go into your fees. Your fees are, late fees and things like that you charge your tenants. Your RUBS is like basically charging them back for utilities if it's a central metered place.
Okay,
And that's a way of charging them back for that. Other income could be like vending machines, laundry machines. So then you take the effective rental income and you add in this other income to get your effective gross income in this scenario to 610. Then you subtract out your OPEX, and here is where you plug in all your numbers for OPEX.
mhm,
You plug in your insurance, your property tax, your payroll, utilities, property management, all the stuff is here. If you don't have something that's specifically demarcated, you can put it, in any one of these that makes sense, maybe add it up on top of that. But these are the main ways that people do the different ways of categorizing your OPEX.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
yes, yes,
So
it does.
plug that all in, and then down here you'll have your effective, I would say your OPEX. So what did they tell you for OPEX?
So it looks like, this is the number I'm using here.
And actually, before we get there, did they give you the gross rent? Or
They
gross
did,
income?
yes, well,
I
yes.
think you said
they
something
have-
like 1.5 or something.
Yes, 1.546, so 145, 1.54.
Is it not right? Let me try that again. 154,000. There we go. Now we come down to effective rental income. That's based off of the numbers we plugged in over here. You can tweak those. Then you get your effective gross income. That's like a total income after all of these adjustments. And then you come to your OPEX. So what do you got for OPEX?
754 is what I have.
Okay. Now you see here the expense ratio. It's showing pink, it's not supposed to. So 50% expense ratio is good. Ignore the pink, I got to fix that. So it's supposed to turn red or pink, I should say, to basically flag you that you're out of the norm. So an
Sure.
expense ratio should be around 40 to 60%.
Okay,
If it's above or below that, you might have something wrong with your numbers.
okay,
Now, it could be that your expense ratio is super high because they're having a problem pulling in rent. It's mismanaged, there's a lot of vacancies or whatever. Or it could be that they're actually like counting things as expenses to line their pockets, but it's not really expenses.
mhm,
So that should be in the 40 to 60 range. If it's outside of that, there's probably something missing or something mismanaged, or you got to try to figure out the piece of the puzzle. Make sense?
okay, yes,
But normally you'll see a 40 to 60 range. If it's mismanaged, it's a good thing for you buying the property, because you can come in and fix that and make the property worth more. So, you want to look for value add opportunities, and mismanaged is a great way to fix to add value to the place. You're going to be buying on an evaluation probably of NOI over cap or something like that. So
Okay.
if the NOI is low because the income is low or because the operating expenses are high, then you pay less for it, you fix it, and you create value. Make sense?
yes,
But if you see something like, this expense ratio could be like 10%, then it's like, whoa, something's wrong here. Something's wrong with my numbers. Or 90%, something's wrong with my numbers. If you're at 30% or 70%, it could be correct. There's a, something going on. You just want to try to understand what it is that's happening. Makes sense?
Yes, yeah,
If they tell you, OpEx is this and NOI is that, and you come up and you're like, well, their operating expenses are only 30%. Well, they're probably not telling you all of the operating expenses,
sure.
or it's deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance means they weren't fixing it, so it wasn't an operating expense, but it has to be fixed at some point in time. So you can't evaluate it based off of an inflated NOI. If it's a 30% expense ratio, then that means that it's an inflated NOI for some reason. Make sense?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And some of them can be managed by themselves, so they might have a property management fee, in particular smaller multifamily. 124, they probably got a property management in there, but you want to
I
watch
believe
for
you do.
that.
I just, I'm not sure too much about it just yet.
Sure,
so.
yeah. But keep an eye on that, make sure all of these are actually there. If there's something missing, you need to make sure to plug it in, because they're just not counting it.
Okay, yeah, they gave me a pretty detailed P&L, and so.
Yeah. Sounds good. The normalized column here is kind of what you would expect to see. It's formulas that go through based off of everything you plugged in up here. It's going to give you a normalized number.
Got
Okay.
it, okay.
Now that doesn't necessarily mean that it's correct, but it should put you in the ballpark. So if their actual is way off from the normalized, something's wrong. So keep an eye on that. Now this again is nationally. So taxes vary from place to place. I don't know what it is in Dallas-Fort Worth, but if your property tax says 43, normalized says 135, 136, just double check it. It could be 43. But make sure what's happening, if there's any big difference between here and here. Okay. All right. What's that?
I was just going to say that according to this, that 135 is pretty close to what this says. This says 139, so it's pretty on par.
Okay, super. I'm just going to type in 139 here. Okay, so cool. Now we already overwrote the formula. So OpEx, the number that was here, it was basically this equals this, right? So this is adding up here, and this is supposed to reflect that. I overrode that with the number you gave me. So when you do a fresh template, you'll have that formula connected. So as you plug in your numbers here, it'll add up to your OpEx total. This will reflect the OpEx total.
Yep, that makes sense.
The NOI, what did they tell you as NOI? I think there's 2 or 3 numbers you got there, but you have a good one you can work with off of that?
Yeah, the NOI net. Would it be this one?
This NOI here I have is based off of the EGI minus the OpEx.
Yeah, I think the
gross
net
income.
income that they have listed here is 630, just under 630. 630,500 is what they have listed.
So I'll go ahead and type out 630. And that may or may not be accurate. So the NOI is frequently wrong when you get their paperwork, because it may not take into account vacancy loss and other losses that are actually there. So just keep an eye on that. This includes all the losses. So that's why we went from 1.54 down to 1.33 because of the losses. Makes sense? And so that's could be why the NOI that this formula gave me was lower at 580 versus the one they gave you at 630.
Sure.
And then the 50% rule basically says if, expense ratio at 50%, which is like an average, that kind of tells you if you're in the ballpark with your NOI. So 770 would be the 50% rule for the NOI. And that's 50% off of the gross rent up here, the GSR, gross, what is that? Gross, so many different acronyms, right? but it's the total of the gross rent, man, my brain's flaking out. Anyway, it's 50% of that, you come to 770. That would be the 50% rule.
Okay.
And that's just a guide to make sure you're in the ballpark.
Sure.
All right, now we come down to rehabs and valuation and pricing. Rehab cost is a total of everything below here. How much CapEx is it going to need? Now, you had mentioned some expenses that weren't OpEx. They're probably CapEx. So capital expenses are the big stuff, like replacing the roof, replacing the plumbing, big plumbing, not just a pipe, replacing the HVAC, repaving the parking lot. Those are CapEx. Okay, so if they had a couple hundred in CapEx expenses, it wouldn't be recorded in the OpEx up here. It isn't part of the NOI. It isn't part of the evaluation. It's just CapEx expenses that we're taking care of. Does that make sense?
It does. To be honest, as I'm looking at their P&L, it looks like they may have rolled it in actually to the NOI. Because I'm looking at a contractor cost here and it's almost several $100,000,
Right.
which sounds pretty high.
Yeah. Technically, CapEx is not included in the NOI.
Yeah.
So it's good to know what they put into it for CapEx, but as well as what you're going to have to put into it for CapEx, right? They did some of the work. There might be more work of CapEx to be accomplished, but you need to know those numbers. But as NOI goes into a number of different things, it plays into evaluation, because the NOI divided by cap is the evaluation. But NOI is also used for loans to evaluate how much loan money can be put into this thing, right? So CapEx does not get included in NOI because it'll mess up the NOI, which will mess up how much loan you can get on the place. Does that make sense? But just so that you know that, and you want to make sure your NOI is a real clean NOI, not a NOI that's off because of CapEx or some other reason.
Okay.
Okay, so coming down to the rehab cost. So there's this is broken up into categories: hardscaping, landscaping, amenities. If you're going to add amenities to the place, like maybe you're going to put in a laundry, CapEx, like fixing the parking lot or whatever major CapEx you got to do. Renovating, this is the number of units that need renovated, which right now it points to the total number of units, but let's say that there's already 100 renovated and there's only 24 left to renovate. So you can just plug in 24 there. And then the renovation cost per unit, like 10,000. It might be more, it might be less. If you're in an area like Memphis, it's going to be cheaper because of the cost of labor. If you're in a city like Dallas Fort Worth, it might be larger. I don't know what it will be, or it might be a difference of how much you're doing as well, in the apartments to renovate it. But anyway, you plug in that number there, the number of units, and what other big numbers you got to do in this property, it comes up with the rehab total up here.
Okay.
Would you say that all the units need renovated?
All of the units need renovating, and if I had to guess, it would probably be around 6,000 per unit.
How much?
Around 6,000 per unit.
Okay. So with that 20,000 landscaping, 30,000 amenities, which I don't know what those would be, and then the 6,000 times 124, you're at 794 for the rehab. Just a guess. Yeah. So you can refine that number. And one of the things that you'll do at some point in time, if you're going to get this place, is walk every unit. And then you'll know if that 6,000 is accurate or what, right? And you'll also know if they're lying to you about different things, like are they actually all occupied? So
Or
you can trust them up front, but at some point in time, you got to do your due diligence.
Yep, sure, that makes sense.
All right, now evaluation. NOI over cap is the main way you want to evaluate it. So you divide this NOI, that once you get it refined, and I put in 630 for now, divided by your cap rate of 7.5, you come up with an evaluation of 7.6 mil. Make sense?
Sure does.
Now, this is not accurate right now. This is the pro forma cap, because I just overwrote a bunch of formulas. I didn't go through all the details, right? But let's say that you take this NOI and you improve it because you have under market rents, because they're overcharging. I mean, the management is, there's too much overhead, whatever it is. You're able to reduce the expenses, increase the rents. Now your NOI, instead of being 630, it's now 700. Oops. Oh, I did the wrong spot. Okay, so now because you've increased the NOI and you've also made your place better, so instead of being a 7.5 cap place, it's now a 7.25 cap place. So now you've actually made the value of this place even higher.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel real secure about this, 7.5 to 7.5, you can do that. My suggestion though, is typically don't do that because you want to buffer things. So
Sure.
if you're starting at a 7.5, just leave it at a 7.5. If you're going to improve the condition of the property, maybe put in some amenities. If you're going to actually improve the property, you typically want to leave it the same, but you could opt, if you really feel you're improving the class, you could opt to lower the cap rate. Make sense?
Yes.
So now that we've gone through that, we see that its original NOI over cap valuation is 7.6. The pro forma is 9.3. So by doing your improvements, you've just added, what is it, 1.6? 1.6 mil, 1.7 mil into this equation. You just added 1.7 mil of value to your property. Make sense?
Yep, it does.
And Val, for the GRM, it shows 6. I don't know how accurate that is for Dallas Fort Worth, but the GRM is telling me it's currently worth 8.4. After you fix it up, it's worth 9.8. So that GRM valuation is a little bit higher than the NOI over cap valuation. The 50% rule valuation basically takes your gross rental income, divide it by 50 to get an NOI. So if you don't have good records, which you'll run into this a lot with multifamily, mom and pop shop run, they don't have good P&L, they don't have good T12, whatever. So you're going off of, okay, what do I have? So the only thing you might have is the rent roll. And even then, sometimes they don't have rent roll. So you have to talk to them and say, okay, how much is this room went for? How much is this one? And build your own rent roll, right? So once you figure out that gross rent, you divide it in half to get a quote unquote NOI. And then you use that to do your evaluation. And now that 50% rule valuation is at 9.4. So this here, what is that? Oh, so then down here we have market comps. So market comps is also a way that you should at some point in time evaluate it. So if you can get a hold of the sales of similar properties in the area, like if you're working through a broker, they should be able to tell you what's the market comps per unit for that area. For a similar class, similar neighborhood, a Class C property, maybe they're going for 45,000 per unit as far as sold comps. So if you have 124 units times 45,000, that would bring you to this number. Well, obviously this is way lower. I'm sure they're not trading at 45K per unit. Maybe they're trading at 90K. I'm just plugging in the number. I don't know what it really is, but that would put, based off of the ease, these up here, I'm going to say that they're maybe 80. Just a wild guess, but that kind of gets me in the ballpark of what I've got going up here, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's 75. But you can ask a broker, find out what it should be comped at. And if they have their offer memorandum, they've got everything all set up, they'll have that for you already. It's just part of the homework. that a broker will do for you. If it's off market, you won't have that. So you just have to do some research yourself. So now that you have all these different valuations, you got to come up with your own evaluation. You got to figure out, okay, based off of all these numbers, what do I think it's worth? This number says 7.6. This says 8.4. This says 9.4. And this says 8.5. You know what? I'm going to go with 8.5. What was their asking again? We put that up there. 11.75.
11.75.
Yeah. Okay, now here's the part of that that you don't see behind the scenes. These numbers over here, if you look at the formula, they are subtracting out the rehab costs. Okay, so it's not exact. The valuation here is not simply NOI over cap. It's NOI over cap minus repairs. So if I
Okay.
look at the formula, I see it's NOI over cap minus repairs. So it will be lower than just simply NOI over cap by 800,000, right? So this would have been 8.4. All of these would have been higher. This 8.5 would have been 9.3. But still, even without subtracting out that rehab, we're still below what they're asking. So
Sure.
yeah, so they're not realistic unless we've got something wrong with our numbers. Make sense?
It does make sense.
They gave you the NOI. The only other thing for the other two pieces for the valuation where we could be off is it really a 7.5 cap area? Now, if I change this 7.5 cap to a 9 cap, let's say. Now, all of a sudden, that valuation dropped to 6.2, right? Because of the NOI over cap valuation. Let's say it's not 7.5, let's say it's actually a 6 cap. Now that raised my valuation up significantly, right? So the cap rate does play a major role. You want to make sure that you get your cap rate correct. So if in general, Dallas Fort Worth 7.5 doesn't necessarily mean yours is 7.5. You want to know what is a C class trading for? Similar condition in your area. So
Mhm.
when you get that, and you can get that from a broker, is this an off market or an on market?
It's kind of both, I guess. I believe the owner is listing it himself. I'm not, he may be the broker.
Okay.
Um,
So the challenge with that is you don't necessarily trust what he has to say. So try to get a third party broker to help you.
Yeah.
Get that information. What's the cap rate for that for a C class in that neighborhood?
Yeah, I think
What's-
he's coming in, he's thinking like a 6.5 cap is where it's at, but I think that's a little overzealous. So.
Yeah. And also, what are they trading at for price per unit?
Mhm.
So plug those in, you'll get a much better evaluation.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that was super helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ralph.
You betcha. There's more. We went 40 minutes overtime. I haven't eaten supper yet. It's 9:40. So I'm going to cut out. But this goes through the funding. Funding one, you can choose bank, seller finance, amortized or interest only. Same thing for funding two, seller finance, etc. You can choose down here if you're going to have, this is your entry fee. You want to make sure what your entire entry fee is. Depending on the type of financing, bank might cover some of the rehab, might not, right? Seller finance won't cover the rehab, right? So you need that. This will try to adjust your entry fee based off of the type of financing you choose. And it will as well try to include, you can add anything in arrears, your marketing you want to tack on as an entry fee because you're going to need to fill vacancies if that was the case. As well as, acquisition, closing, holding, make sure to get your entry fee all out there. Entry fee is important because you need to know cash on cash. Any investor is going to want to know cash on cash, and you have to have entry fee to get an accurate cash on cash.
Okay.
Okay. And then your investor, how are you going to plug in the investor funding? Is it your cash? Is it, are you going to do a GPLP syndication? Are you going to do private money loan? or, you know, a silent money partner, you can figure that into here, and it'll tell you based off of that. You know, if let's say it's a PML, private money loan, at 10%, that increases your debt service, right? So debt service is important because you want to make sure that it's a safe deal.
Yep.
If your debt service ratio or debt service coverage ratio, DSCR, DCR, is too low, it's not safe.
Sure.
Number one, you can't get a loan because it's not safe. Number two, you don't want to do it because it's not safe. So you want to stay above 1.25.
Mhm.
Some people will loan at 1.2. I don't suggest getting into a deal at 1.2. Above 1.25, you know, 1.5, 1.6 is great. 3.0 is not great. It means you're under leveraged, and you can squeeze more out of this lemon if you have a lower debt service coverage ratio. 1.5, 1.6 is a great place to be at.
Okay.
So PML would work as our numbers stand if we give the offer price. Oh, well, this is showing 4.5 million, and that's why. So we're actually going to change from this, let's call it 8.5 million.
Yeah.
Now that changes everything, right? So now we have a debt service coverage ratio of 0.8. That basically means that your NOI does not cover your debt servicing. You're in the red every month.
Yeah.
So you can't use that. If you don't use PML, now you're not in the red, you're at 1.35, you're good. So you can do either an LP partner, or you can do your own cash, but basically you're good to go if you don't use, you know, you're good to go with another type of a partner at 8.5 mil.
Okay.
And this shows you as well your loan to value and your yield. So your yield percent and your loan to value, that is also part of, can you get a loan on this? So if you have a bank loan, they're going to be looking at these right here, DSCR, LTV, and yield, to make sure that this is loanable.
Okay.
All right. And it-
Got a question for you, Ralph. Just out of curiosity, are these, I guess, like this deal analyzers is pretty standard for what most people use as far as the formulas and the algorithms that are calculated?
Yeah. So the numbers the formulas that are in here, I stole from Bigger Pockets.
Yeah,
Stole
okay.
as in,
It looked really familiar, but
yeah. But all the formulas in the background, they're built off of their numbers.
okay.
I trust them, you know, everyone has their own go-to numbers, but I like their numbers. So then down below, you have the, you know, over here we have CapEx is put in after the fact because it's not part of your NOI. It doesn't come into play until down here because the bank funding is before the CapEx. And everything you see here is before CapEx. Now we have to tack in the CapEx, and then we can see based off of the adding in the CapEx where we stand for actual cash flow. This is our cash flow area. So after your debt servicing, you have your NOI minus your debt servicing minus your CapEx gives you your cash flow.
Okay.
Make sense? You need to include CapEx. CapEx will happen, right? Some people don't include it. So the $80 per door is, again, built off of the Bigger Pockets number, but it's based off of these numbers up here. How many beds, baths, how many rooms per building, how many doors, what's the age of the property, all this stuff goes into the formula for $80 per door.
Okay.
So that gives you 119 CapEx. So with our current scenario, we're actually negative cash flowing,
Mhm.
right? So this will tell you if you're going to be positive or negative based off of the actual numbers you plug in. And again, you know, we haven't done a thorough analysis. We're just kind of plugging in some rough numbers, but take a look at that after CapEx and make sure you're cash flowing positive. And then based off of your cash flow, now you can break up your share. If you do a share with a partner, whether it be a syndicated partner or just a friend and a silent money partner friend, how much of the cash flow are they going to get? How much are you going to get? how much appreciation share are they going to get? How much are you going to get? Right.
Okay.
So if you have to think about your exit strategy. Are you going to hold it for 5 years? Or what are you going to do with it? So the appreciation comes into play at some point in time. Are you going to refi it? Are you going to hold it and sell it? You just, so you want to keep that in mind. You want to have already in your arrangement, what's the share of appreciation and cash flow? Okay. And then you come down here based off of your cash flow and your share. Now you've got your partner's cash on cash, your partner's IRR, and your partner's ROI based off of what he put into it. So is he getting a 1x, a 0.5x, a 3x? So you want to, after however many years. So after 5 years, a 3x return is great. A 20% IRR is great. Well, we're at 0.3%. We're at 0 cash on cash, minus 20, because our numbers aren't right, right? So these, you want to see a cash on cash at like 10% or better, typically. There are plays where you have a high cash on cash and low appreciation, and it kind of depends on your market. Or it might be the opposite, where you have low cash on cash and high appreciation. Or you might have a balance, right? But you want to have something that sells the deal to your investors. Either great cash on cash, great IRR, or that's going to correlate to a great ROI.
Mhm.
Okay. But something there has to sell the deal. Otherwise, it's a no deal.
Yep. Okay, perfect. No, that was super helpful. Thank you, Ralph. And gosh, yeah, didn't mean for you to go so much time over. But,
Oh, no
definitely
problem.
really appreciate the help.
You betcha. Let me just look through here real quick and make sure if there's any last minute. All right, looks like we covered everybody. So thank you all for sticking around, and I hope it was helpful. If anybody needs help on a deal, if you have a deal that you can't figure out how to close, pre-foreclosure or otherwise, give me a call. I'm happy to help. Maybe there's a solution that's just not in clear daylight. We can bring it out and help make the deal happen. So thanks everybody, and have a great evening. Nice to be with you tonight. Bye.
Good night, Ralph. Thank you.
You betcha, Nee. Take care.
Ralph.
Bye-bye.